I'm going to ask our Secretary, Evie Walters, to call the roll so you folks know by who answers to what name. Evie?
Gene Anvick. Fred Tribe.
Present.
Rick Fisher. Mary Crowley. Terry Holmes. Here. George Olson. Richard Parker. Jim Parsons.
Here.
Frank Reed.
Here.
William Sheffield.
Here.
Arlen Sturgeon.
Here.
Thank you, Evie. We'd like to go directly into the public hearing, the purpose that we're basically here for tonight. We have passed out to you a note from our membership, and I'd like to read it for the record's sake. We of the Charter Commission are here tonight to listen to your ideas on what a new government for the Anchorage area should be. We have had 4 other such sessions, and we will travel to Girdwood tomorrow to get their localized input. Not only do we want your input on the new Constitution, we also want to assure you that we are doing nothing to jeopardize in any way your pursuit of any other course that seems appropriate to you in terms of local government. We ask that if you wish to speak, you limit your remarks to 5 minutes so that everyone may be heard in the time we have together. We understand that a great many problems are bothering you, the residents of Shugiak and Eagle River, but since our power is limited to creating a new charter, we must ask that you address your remarks to aspects of the charter only. And our sincere thanks to you for coming out tonight. Whatever your input, you can be sure it will assist us in our deliberations to create a better government for all of the people. And I do appreciate your being here, and when you speak, I would like to have you give your name so that for the record's sake, it will be there. We will invite and ask that any of you who do not express all that you want to express feel like writing something down, sending it in to us, we would appreciate having it in writing. The address of the commission is at 529 I Street. We have a small office there. It used to be Dr. O'Malley's office. And if you either wish to stop in there or write us there, we would appreciate it. To begin with, I'd like to tell you that we've been working for better than a couple of months now. Last month we put in 16 regular sessions, averaging about 3 hours apiece. We have a charter production committee that has put in 15 sessions, averaging about 2 hours apiece. We have other committees, the Public Opinion Research Committee and Public Information Committee, that have also met and put in time. We're faced with the same kind of dilemma that you people were faced with, I think, when the Supreme Court ruled that the borough out here was not a legal borough. We're in a position, we have a job to do, and we're going to try to do it to the best of our ability. And I think, hopefully, if you do remain a part of this community, your input into it is going to be helpful to us. And if you don't, it still is going to be helpful to us. We have areas in the community that are very similar to the area out here. You get outside of a main urbanized downtown and Spenard and Muldoon area, you begin to get into areas that have many of the aspects that you have out here. So if any of you have anything to say to us, we'd appreciate it. Recognize whoever would like to speak. Briggs?
Chairman, I'm one that is interested in what's going to be proposed for the charter. I don't know how much has been done. I gathered more from the news item tonight indicating some tentative consideration by the charter group, indicating now a proposal of representation by groups to the, what was 5 different areas. First place, I'm not aware of what those 5 areas are. The 4 with 3 each, the 1 with 2. In the last day or two, I've attempted to locally, I haven't made as much effort as I should, to find out what's been done to date and what tentatively you have in mind as a charter. It's rather difficult for me to ask questions, and I will have them, but I don't have any basis from which to start. Certainly there must have been up to this date some basic decisions and rough skeleton outline which have been filled in, others blanks which haven't been decided upon. So I can't at this moment ask some questions, but I would like a chance to find out what's been done to date, then you'll be in a better position to comment one way or the other.
Mr. Briggs, I can tell you this. I hope I'm able to outline for you what has happened. We have the Charter Production Committee, and they has met and gone over we started out with the 1971 charter, used it as a guideline. We wanted to go through it and see what things we needed out of it, what things we thought were superfluous or unneeded, what additions, what changes. And we've taken it section by section. We have referred to model city charters and to Sitka, Juneau, the Anchorage City Charter, and a few other reference pieces that we've been able to get. We find we have made some decisions for the first skeletal draft. That draft, we hope, will be available to you folks and to all the rest of the people in the community within 10 days or a little less. That draft will be printed for you. Now, addressing the particular question of the 4 districts, it's 4 districts the way it was passed last night. 4 districts, 3 with 3 members each and 1 with 2 members. The districts are not determined because that's going to have to be a matter of reapportioning now with Eagle River Inn. You're not included at this moment. The map is there, and that's got to be done by a map, so you can look at it and see it and vote on it. That can be done several ways. The Borough Assembly can reapportion and put the map on the ballot earlier. We can put it on the ballot with the charter, and I'm not sure myself of all the ins and outs of how that would work. Or it could be done after the charter. But if it is, well, I'd have to turn to Rick, our attorney, here to tell us. Really, we're seeking what's going to be the best for the area that we can, and I can't tell you very much more. I wouldn't want to tell you something that was wrong, and that's where we stand now.
Mr. Chairman,
Arliss?
If I might just make a comment for Mr. Briggs. The Unification Act calls for two rounds, really, of public hearings. One during preparation of the charter and one after completion. And by really with design, the commission went out for its first round of hearings when we really had very much of a blank sheet of paper. In other words, we really, truly have sought public input. Unfortunately, we were not aware of the situation here until we had gotten into the drafting process. We are soon going around for another round of hearings, and most assuredly will be here after you do have that first draft. But in addition to what Chairman Reed has said, we have worked very hard to make this document one that does not contain a lot of special legislation, that is very much of a constitution form, one that I think is very much the type that allows for opportunity for citizens to be involved in their government, such as the community councils and some of the other features in it. So I realize it's somewhat difficult to get the input now, but that's what we want, because we're in that beginning stage.
Say in 10 days when that is available, where will it be available? And would you suggest maybe a week or 10 days after that, a hearing on this form of legislation?
We have the hearing dates set. I think it's the 21st, 2nd, and 3rd is...
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we will have a hearing in each area of the borough presently represented on the Assembly. In addition, we'll have a hearing out here, so it should be 5 hearings in the week of the 20th, 21st, 22nd of May. And I think we're planning to have the draft printed in the papers, the newspapers, so that it will be of general circulation so that people can look at it and make really specific comments to us on it.
Mr. Chairman, also though, we have, our meetings are all open to the public. We've been meeting at, like almost every night of the week, but our regular meeting, one we will always be present, will be at Grant Hall on the AMU campus. I realize that's somewhat difficult to come in, but we do meet at 7:30. There is an opportunity for anyone at that time to come and speak to us if you're not able, say, to make one of the regular meetings, and they're completely open and people are welcome to be there. On Thursday, did I state that incorrectly?
We do ask that you let us have a little warning that you're going to be in, so we can schedule you into the persons to be heard. Is there someone else that would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I heard you say something about district and a 4-3-2 representation or something of that kind. And yet I got the impression that you had not done any districting so that you could tell whether or not we would be entitled to representation from this community, and that got my attention. Could you enlarge on that?
Right. We have stated in our last night, the motion that's passed, that there would be 4 districts. 3 of those districts having 3 members each, 1 district having 2 members. All members being elected for 3 years. Of course, that'd be on a staggered basis. The actual apportionment or where the districts lie, we don't know yet. That would have to be drafted yet. If in the final draft, this is the way it turns out for districts, then there will have to be either the Borough Assembly will have to apportion on some such basis and have an election, prior to the Charter Commission election, or the charter will have to include a map in it, which you will look at and vote on, along with the charter, designating the areas and where the representation is.
Okay, and for your instrument there, my name is Shirey.
Thank you.
Another question that was prompted by your opening remarks had to do with community councils. Now, what kind of provision is made there, say that we were to get back into the greater Anchorage area borough as a fixed thing? What recognition do you have in the development of community councils that would give Eagle River or Chugiak Eagle River some opportunity of providing advice to, say, the greater Anchorage area borough governmental body?
We have a community council section, the establishment of which would go like this. Community councils may be established to provide residents the opportunity for maximum community self-determination without infringing upon the rights of persons not represented by community councils. The legislative body, by ordinance, shall provide for the establishment, duties, and functions of community councils. Powers. The legislative body, by ordinance, shall provide for procedures to allow for the negotiation between the local government and each community council with respect to sharing of rights and powers, and may provide for each community council to supervise the furnishing of services in an area. So we are putting it back to the legislative body for the format.
Mr.
But
Chairman.
we are instructing them to provide for this format. Arliss?
Mr. Chairman, just might speak just very briefly on community councils. Both the borough now and the city council provide for a form of community councils, and there have been a number formed, and basically what they do is allow for, say, advance notice to the citizens of a community that there are items coming up that are going to impact an area so they can be on hand. Community councils can be really a form of neighborhood government. They can go much further. They can either be a very, say, advisory body or actually be delegated powers. And we just adopted this last night, and that's why it was in rough draft and not ready to go out to you. But we feel it allows flexibility for the government, the new government, to work on such problems as we see here and possibly Girdwood in certain other areas. So it's very flexible wording that really is a framework. We're not putting in the details because conditions they do change, don't they?
Yes, they do.
All right.
That we're assured of.
Right.
Well, I was thinking like they have the Chugiak Benefit Association, which is the one thing, and I think it would be appropriate that should we be reestablished under the Greater Anchorage Area Borough, that agencies such as that would be specifically allowed to offer guidance to the Greater Anchorage Area Borough. Another point that I would like to hear on has to do with matter of pay. Now, I believe that both borough and city have a kind of a deal that's if you work a night, you get paid a night if you're on a commission or the assembly or such matter as that. I think that we were aimed at the same thing out here. When you were there, you were going to get paid for it. But I have noticed, and I won't say about our immediately past experience, but in the Greater Anchorage Area Borough, that there are those who put in quite a bit of time at the job and those who are hard to get an ear on. And that led me to ask the question as to whether you were going to have a pay based on, if you're there for a night of assembly, you collect $35 or $50 or $75 plus travel or whatever. Or is there some kind of awareness that if you pay an individual over a period of time, he should be probably better prepared, if nothing else, when he comes to his assembly meeting. And all the people who go into this business should have some other kind of business that keeps them out of trouble most of the time. But to break into that kind of schedule and be sure that they're prepared then when they're sitting as you are here, I think there ought to be 2 bits worth thrown at them through the week to be prepared for that Sunday night festival or for whatever they are supposed to perform. And what, if anything, has been done on that?
We have not addressed wages for commissions or boards.
Okay, then my recommendation would be that you consider, under these sincere considerations, some kind of stipend that is oriented to a more continuing function than the once a week or the once a month, depending on the night you appear and smile at the public. I think there ought to be something that pays a gent or a doll for his or her time to be prepared properly when he functions in his or her position.
Well, you're standing and I'd like to just try one on for size that I've been kind of playing around with and talking about. Some of the others agree with me a little bit. That is a requirement that no public business be considered between the hours of midnight and 8 a.m.
I'd buy that in an instant.
It's one of the things that I'd like to see.
I don't think their best work is done in public after midnight.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shively. Are there any, Mr. Parsons?
The commission has, in its deliberations, tried to be as general in its wording rather than get into too many things on salaries and the like, leaving anything that might be composed by the government when it's formed by ordinance, so that we are trying for the barest bones outline and putting in only those things that people tell us from the hearing and what we think are the bare skeleton, and that the framework be filled in by the legislative body of the new government.
I understand what you said, and I think I agree with your principle. However, there's such a thing as just putting down pay, and then a thing that says recommended. But I think that as a guidance group and a formative group, the consideration of a benefit rather than as a calendar period, once a week you get paid if you appear and function. There should be something in the guidance to this consideration of pay.
Then you think it should be in the charter rather than left to the
My
legislature?
recommendation is that there is something to compensate the individual for his time and preparation, as well as just appearing for the real performance. You know, the dress rehearsal gets paid as well as the public performance, and I think the public performance should improve as a result of paying for the time taken in preparation, because you're borrowing time for most people who function in your capacities have other things to do.
Mr. Chai?
Well, the only thing I wanted to mention is that the charter is a concept, it's a constitution, and you can't burden it with a lot of details. The minute you start putting something in about somebody's pay over here, 9 other people come up over here and say, what about us? And the minute you start on the pay thing, then you got everybody saying, what happens to our jobs and where do we go? So at best, the only thing we can do, as Mr. Parsons was pointing out, is conceptually adopt it, but as far as getting into intimate details, that would not go in any charter.
The concept that I recommend
Right.
is pay be for preparation
Right.
as well as the time performance.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Proney?
we have a section in the charter that is transitional also, Mr. Shire, and pay could be spoken to in there and would not be forever and ever in the charter, because the transitional section does cancel itself out in a year or such a matter.
Well, I don't believe it would be too difficult to break out of the mold we got into, but I think it's a bad one. That's why it's something that nudges us off into a different concept of pay.
A lot of people think they're overpaid right now.
They're not the ones who are getting paid.
Since we aren't paid, why, we're not too worried about it.
Mr. Fisher?
Can I ask a question? How about something conceptually that we say that pay of the assembly or boards and commissions will be commensurate with that similar position in private enterprise? Would that hit on it?
It leaves it open to going back to the performance bit again. And what I'm looking for in the way of the philosophical tangent for what we've been doing is that if you put in time on preparation, you get paid for it. And so that you should perform better. And the concept would be preparation is paid as well as performance. And that's the truth you're going to get stated. However you match that round, I would recommend the concept.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Holmes?
I know that frequently members of boards and commissions and assemblies and so forth don't attend, well, I can't say frequently, but occasionally they don't attend work sessions because they're not being paid for attending the work session. Is this what you're getting at?
Among other things.
Among other things, okay.
Anything called preparation.
Are there other questions or others who would like to speak? Would you give your name for the record?
Mr. Reed, I just came in a little late. On this assembly members or board members, like assembly members, would it be possible to have them on a full-time paying basis to save the area of money? In other words, have them work full-time at it instead of part-time like the city. They give a $300 a month expense, $25 a meeting, then plus somewhere around the borough assembly, they take in about $1,100 a month.
Well, that hasn't been addressed up to this time. It's something that we'll certainly consider. I don't, basically, personally, I'm a little bit against getting a full-time political body, but I can see a reason for it also, the reason you're talking about.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear Joe speak just a little bit more on that. Do you feel it would be desirable that let's assume that we have one body, that your politically elected people would be paid a full salary, or are you objecting to would that be better that way, say, than so much a night in expense? Is that what you're saying?
I think people's rights be at the job of who they're representing full time for the community and for the whole area. Like the state legislators down in June, they get possibly $15,000 a year salary plus the other expenses.
You think that would be desirable?
Mr. Chai?
Isn't there a possibility, Joe, that you shortchange yourself on something like that? Because the good people that you want, that have the expertise and the background, may be the people that are employed some other place and making pretty good money, and they're not going to quit that job to take some other job. I mean, you're going to end up maybe with a bunch of hackers on something like this.
But then also, too, these people are good at the other job and plus work that job part-time and really don't go there full-time to it.
Well, you're going to get, that's right, you're going to get that. There's no doubt about it.
Or there should be some compromise somewhere to lead us where these work for the community or the area instead of being for political reasons of moving up or anything like that.
Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Bill Lowe, Peters Creek, and I'd like to state first for the record that my presence here tonight is not in any way constitute endorsement of this body or this purpose, because I have in the past protected the concept of unification of the city of Anchorage based on that concept alone, not on the concept of unification as an idea. But I would like to kind of refresh my memory, and I don't feel too well prepared to we didn't have anything to look at beforehand. What is the basis for the 11 members versus, is this a population situation? I've kind of forgotten the base for selecting 11 members.
You mean on the new government? We hassled this at some length, and I think our group's feeling was that the larger you get, the more cumbersome it gets, and that something under 12 would probably be as big as you want it to go. However, the other side of the coin is that the smaller the group, the more people that each person must represent. So that we tried to come up with some kind of compromise on size of the governing body that didn't get too cumbersome. If you get into 15, 18 people in the assembly, the meetings get that much longer when everyone wants to say something. And so we felt that 11, at this point anyway, for the first draft, was a reasonable compromise as to size, workable, and would allow representation of an adequate number of people. An odd number so that the obvious tie situation wouldn't arise.
Based on that idea, and I think I can grab that thought, from my observations and what appears to be general experience, I believe that the current assembly and the city council, and maybe I shouldn't talk about the city council, I know we're talking about the borough assembly as I've been able to observe in the past years, has had to devote itself to too many what I would call detailed types of work. I believe, frankly, it should be devoted itself more to, should we say, the conceptual or the policy and the important things, rather than to get in there and have a knockdown, drag-out battle with every man who wants to express a grievance about one little thing or another. Now, I have no objection. I feel everybody has a voice, should have a place to be heard. But I'm not so sure that the city council, or the proper terminology, the borough assembly, should be the place to have a forum for every little bitch and gripe that has to come along. I think that somewhere along the line, if they're going to do that, they should have two types of meetings. One for the gripes and the other one to take care of the major part of business and establish the policy in the type of area. I believe that if they're going to form a new government, I would envision a horrible extension of what we've seen in the past over what we have now because of the general feelings that are engendered by this unification action. And so I think that would be one area I think we should give some real serious consideration to establishing the type of functions that the new borough assembly could undertake for its formal meetings.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Holmes?
Mr. Lowe, I'd like to ask you if you think that maybe the community councils would be an effective way of helping to deal with the small concerns that maybe tie the hands of the assembly time-wise. Do you see this as a good vehicle? I guess I'd like your comments on the idea of community councils.
The word community councils, and I ask myself the question is, what authority will these people have? What stature will they have? And how effective can they actually be? What official capacity will they have? If they can be, other than just, shall we say, an excuse to say, well, you had your chance to put your word in, go talk to the community council, and it doesn't have any real effect, then I would say perhaps forget it. I feel that we have one example, and I'm not so sure that this is necessarily so basic for consideration, but we did have one advisory board out here in Chugiak that did have functioning capabilities. It could make decisions, it could administrate, it could act in a capacity which was recognized and endorsed, approved by the council. Excuse me, I'm not ignoring you. That is what I think about the community council. If it can be duly constituted and also have recognition by the section in which it is evolved. I don't know how you plan it. Were you planning to have those elected or appointed?
The boards.
The community council.
Maybe Lisa, who is
Parker?
has worked most on this, ought to speak with you on it because she's most familiar.
Mr. Parker?
The final draft that we approved last night would allow the legislative body to provide the establishment of them, and then for powers, it would be where the community council, each different community council that was formed would negotiate with the legislative body for the rights and powers for that community council. So if a community council wanted to do something, they would draw it up in their draft, and when they went to be recognized by the Borough Assembly as community council, they would negotiate with the community if the legislative body said, well, we think that you're stepping too far, and that it would work better because this service of this power is area-wide, and this would put a big hole in providing of this, then, you negotiate any power or right that you want with them. And it also says that each community council may, the legislative body may delegate the furnishing of a service within an area to a community council. And this is also negotiate with the legislative body.
Mr. Chairman?
Can I ask a question? I'm not so sure I fully follow in front of it. Are you trying to indicate to me, from what you just said, that this is going to be an extension of the old service area concept, and that these might be in any particular group or confirmation of geographical area that wouldn't necessarily represent a specific districting or this type?
Well, what it would be is that a community council wanted to be formed wherever it was, a group of citizens got together and they said, we're a community, we want to do this for ourselves, we think that the government stinks, they don't provide the service or they don't enforce the ordinance the way we should, we want to do it ourselves. They go, they talk to the legislative body and negotiate with them for these different rights and services. They can act, you could say it would be a service area, you could say, you could call it whatever you want, but whatever the legislative body or the local government could do, the community council could do also after they negotiate with the legislative body. So it would be like there would be a check and balance between the legislative body here and the council here. The community council would say what they want to do, the legislative body over here would say you can do it or you can't do it. The community council would say, well, if you say no, then you're infringing upon our rights, and we don't think right, whatever. You're not a check and balance type system.
Who makes up this? I mean, this is just a uprising of the citizens. They say, for example, let me just set aside an example. Last night we formed a Chugiak Eagle River Borough Association here. Could that constitute itself as a community council? Well, excuse me, if I'm listening to you correctly, then we're trying to get rid of the city council in Anchorage, and we're going to form a random number of city councils that can do anything they want to do within the framework of the Borough Assembly. How is this unification?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sheffield,
Maybe I missed your concept, Mr. Parker, but this is what has been coming across to me. I'm not so sure I'm getting the picture.
I'll call on Mr. Sheffield and then Mrs. Froney.
Well, I was just going to try to clarify. I think Lisa probably said it, but I don't know if we all could hear it down here. But as I understand the community council bill, it's anyone in any given area, any group of people could get together and call themselves a community council, and they could elect their governing body from themselves to have themselves represented at we'll say a borough assembly. If they had a problem in their area, this community council would get together and meet weekly or monthly or whatever they want to meet, and then that representative, or whoever they wanted to name, could go and it would be recognized by the borough assembly as a recognized community council, and they would go and iron out their problems and see what they could do for them. I I don't know if I've said it right yet or not, but I think that's how I envision it.
May I stop this for a moment and say, somebody who has a Volkswagen bus blue Volkswagen bus with a white stripe, license 30173, has his lights on.
It's white Volkswagen bus with a blue stripe, sir.
White Volkswagen. It says blue with a white stripe.
Oh, I meant to tell you when I came in and I forgot it. It's not mine.
Mr. Troney?
Yes, I would like to speak on this community council. I think you missed the first sentence of this whole business. And it says, community councils may be established to provide residents the opportunity for maximum community self-determination without infringing upon the rights of persons not represented by community councils. Now, you folks are out here on the edge. If you folks were sitting in the middle of the bowl, you could be allowed very much fewer community rights than you could be out here. Say, if you want to do your own taking care of roads out here, the chances are very good that the new legislative bodies would allow you to have that right and power. But where you're sitting down at the corner of Tudor and Lake Otis, it's very doubtful that that community council would be granted the right of taking care of their roads, because they're right in the center of where the major government is taking care of the roads. And that would mean that all the equipment would have to go around that area, and it would be more expensive for the surrounding citizens who are accepting the government service grant from the larger government. So, since you folks are out here on the edge, the chances are very good that you would be allowed the maximum number of rights and powers. Let me read it once more. It says, to provide the residents the opportunity for maximum community self-determination without infringing upon the rights of persons not represented by community council. And that's the reason that Lisa spoke of negotiation, because what would not cause the majority of citizens a problem in the rest of the area around could be allowed. And if you're off on the edge, you're less likely to cause those next to you a problem.
Mr. Chairman.
Does that make a little sense to you? That's the reason for the negotiation.
Mr. Fisher, please.
Mr. Lowe, Bill, you bring up a real good point. I mean, I can see exactly what you're getting at. I think, what we're attempting to do with this is, first of all, do away with the city of Anchorage, which has the power of tax. Now, no way community councils have the power of tax. I think the power to tax, the power to govern, we all agree with that.
I didn't know the city of Anchorage had the power to that.
Oh, yes.
That's all we do is request for taxation to be levied.
No. They levy the tax. City of Anchorage levies tax. That makes the government. Okay? Right. Okay. Kind of like taxes. You can govern. Okay. At the same time, there is a desire to have some real community input. More on an advisory.
But things is.
And ultimately, the power rests with the Assembly. And I think that's what we're trying to do. It would be one legislative body for the entire area. And we think this is a worthwhile goal, or at least I do.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lowe?
I can comment backwards in relation to what Mr. Tony has just mentioned, Mr. Fisher. I accept Mr. Fisher's premise regarding the tax power of taxes. But by the same token, what Mr. Tony has mentioned, I envision a simple situation here, for an example, that the community of Chugiaki River, because of the community, apparently we're not defining any particular boundaries in this case, has a very strong interest in fire and police powers. So as a group, we form a community council which covers fire and police powers, and would have this relative power.
Let me answer that.
I'm not finished yet. I want to set up my situation. Right. Okay. Now, this community council has that particular interest and has been endorsed by the Borough Assembly. It functions in this area as necessary. By the same token, I find that down here in Peters Creek, I would like to have some roads and sidewalks. So I want to bring my neighbors and hear all of mine. We're going to have another community council sitting within a community council because we're going to ask for permission to operate roads in our way because the rest of the community doesn't want to pay for road tax. But we're willing to pay for road tax. Now what happens?
There should be no great problem as far as I can see it. It can work either as overlapping, if you're working for one service and only accepting one service. And as far as the taxing, right, if you folks have determined that you wish to be taxed to furnish that service, I think that most of us visualize that you would request the Assembly to put the amount of tax that it would take to pay for the service that you're wanting to supervise for yourselves.
Okay, now, does that tell me now the next follow again? Does that tell me that you have scuttled the service area concept?
No, sir.
Per se?
May I read you the surface area concept? I have that here too. We've been through the preliminary draft of that, though it has not been fully approved by the Charter Commission yet. I'd like to tell you where we are. The service area is established to provide special services to a specific area by means of a uniform tax within the area. The Assembly by ordinance shall adopt procedures for creating, establishing, abolishing, and operating service areas. A service area may be created, extended, or abolished only with the approval of a majority of those voting on the question within the area affected, or with the consent of the owners of all real property within the area affected. And then we have something new that we're proposing to put in the charter, and that is assessment districts that may be used for services or may be used for capital improvements. Let me read that to you. The assessment district is established to provide and finance capital improvements by means of an assessment or services by means of a tax levy proportionate to the benefit received from and the burden or the service within an assessment district. The Assembly by ordinance shall adopt procedures for creating, extending, abolishing, and operating assessment districts. An assessment district may be created. That last one shouldn't be in. That was supposed to have been crossed out. An assessment district may be created, extended, or abolished only with the approval of the property owners who bear more than 50% of the cost of the improvement or service. An assessment district for capital improvements, with respect to which bonds have been sold, may not be abolished until the assessments levied for that district are paid. A special assessment for capital improvements with interest and collection charges is a lien on the property assessed second only to property taxes and prior special assessments. In other words, this is allowing assessment districts to be used for services.
Mary?
Or service areas to be used for services. If you used an assessment district for services, it could be done on a basis in relation to benefit rather than in relation to total ad valorem value.
All right. I'd like to interrupt here. Basically, it's very difficult to talk to you about something that we haven't finished as yet. We haven't really considered totally. And I would like to restrict it to our listening so we get more input, and we don't really wish to, shall we say, argue with you, because we need your input, and what you have said has been good input. I know Mrs. Sturgulewski wanted to talk, and then, no?
No, that's fine. I agree with your comment.
Mrs. Parker, and I would hope that she would keep it, I would hope that she would keep it brief.
I'd just like to point out, I haven't talked for 5 minutes, I've been listening.
I know you have, but
How about
some of your questions were related to this idea. That was the reason I read it.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. I don't follow in detail your idea, but I think I got the impression. There's just one thought I would like to bring, or one more question, which may present a thought for you before I leave it out. And that is still going back to my original request, the question about the composition of the assembly. You stated that we were going to have 4 districts with 3-3 and
3 and 2.
What is the objection to having 11 individual districts?
This was quite a battle last night. We came out a 7-4 decision for the 4.
You mean that other concept was proposed?
The other concept was
Could you give me a little bit of the argument on the point? I think that this is a very valid point, but I would like to hear just a little bit why we don't have 11. You know, I may just, by way of background, have you recognize that we are a solid community in fighting outsiders, but we can be split to be hell insiders.
Mr. Shive.
May I answer that for you?
And I feel that somehow or other, if it happened that we were, shall we say, combined with another group, that we might find we're losing our personal representation. We sure as heck want to get our voice.
Right, may I?
Mr. Shive.
What we're preparing now is our first draft. We took a vote on it last night based upon findings that we've had from summaries that were taken by a polling group. We had a polling group going on at the same time we were doing this. This is only a first draft. It goes out for public hearing again. Now, after the public hearing, if the general populace, if the majority says single district is better than multi-district, we'll go to that. But we're going to be listening. So that's why I can answer you without debating it. And as I said, I'd like to hear more from you people rather than not telling you what's in it.
Mrs. Holmes.
Mr. Chairman, I guess from Mr. Lowe that you would support the single-member districts. That's...
If I have to have this, yes, I think I would.
Would you, if, say, the people who draw the lines of the districts based on the number of people, if they came up saying that the Chugiak Eagle River area did not have enough people to meet the Supreme Court one-man, one-vote thing and have all your own district, would it matter to you if part of, say, Muldoon had to be in your single district? Would you still favor a single-member district?
Well, we lived with that before, and I guess we could do it again. That's what we have to have. I would prefer, hope that we've got enough population out here now to warrant at least one of our representatives, and I was hoping that maybe even had 2.
You're willing to live with that?
But
if we have to, I still want to have a voice that fully represents us, yes.
Ms. Parker.
I was wondering, Mr. Lowe, if we were on to ask you what the dealing of the people last night at the meeting.
I think that it would be better for somebody here besides me, because if I stood here in opposition, as everybody was looking at me right now and saying, yeah. So I think we better have somebody else express that feeling rather than myself. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
I'll try to make this brief, Mr. Chairman and charter members. My name is D.C. Schrader. I live here, Upper Eagle River Valley, and I always did like good government myself. And as you charter members here to set up a good government, I fully support 100% of the unified government. But I'd like to see a line drawn from Raven Creek to Mount Ord to the limits of Fort Rich, and just include the Anchorage Bowl, because I believe that would be one of the most efficiency governments we could have in the area. But leave the Chugat-Eagle River to the Mat-Su Borough alone. If you bring this area in, you're going to have nothing but upheaval, trouble, and everything else. So we'd have to separate the soldiers and Indians separate, you know. So I do believe that you people are elected to represent all those people, and you should set up a good, nice government for the Anchorage Bowl. But drawing the line, everything north of the range from, like I say, Raven Creek, Mount Ord into Fort Ridge, everything south, leave this ununified. And I believe you still have a good government. I know we would have a good government. Now, I don't like the concept of the Anchorage Borough in certain ways, but I do believe their service areas are the way the borough's been run. I have no kicks on it so far. Only one thing with the fire district's too far apart, and the guys live way out in the end of it. You might forget it, but you pay for it. I don't like that way. I think it's done taking unfair advantage of people.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's time to tell these folks that we did check and that we found that whether or not we went ahead with unification, whether or not unification took place, would not legally jeopardize your position of going to the Boundary Commission and asking for a separate borough, that it would legally have no effect. We did check on that when it was, I reported to the former assembly had come to us and asked for us not to take any action until after, and we did check on that point.
Well, Mrs. Cronin, that's the lawyer's viewpoint. Now, I can go to 100 lawyers, get 100 different viewpoints. Unless it's a Supreme Court or some court ruling, then I would abide by it. But I've been caught in lawyers' deals myself, so I have to watch it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Gentlemen?
Chairman, I just want to comment on Mr. Schroeder's comment there. Mrs. Cronin just said that we could also have our chance to vote on our own separate borough. Frankly, myself, I've lost faith. I believe that we once had the opportunity to vote, regardless of whether it was legal or not. This was the will of the people to have their own government. And if we voted 100 times, they could find some other means of throwing it out. So I think we're listening.
Mr. Butcher, we can't do that. Charter Commission can't unify anything less than the entire ruling.
This is right, but I think we should have the right to vote for the charter members as going to write this charter. I don't like to go down to Palmer and Matt too and try to run their business because I don't think it's right. I did not vote in their election, and I don't think it's right for me to go down there. I like to go there fishing.
Mr. Schrader, there might be one or two of us that agree with you.
Was there someone else who would like to be heard? Ma'am? Would you give your name?
Natalie Brooks. I just started, so I have no idea what stuff is going to be for. I was in favor of the community council concept that was approved last night, I believe. Because if it turns out that we don't get our own government, this might be at least one small way that we would have some voice. And so I'd like to see.
Thank you. Someone else would like to be heard? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Shepard Johnston. If we are kept in the greater Anchorage area borough and we don't find any way out of it at all, I, for one, would like to see you people incorporate there a definite district on this side of the military, as we've always been, as we tried to incorporate our borough and temporarily failed on it. But I would not like to be included with any other area. We've had problems before with the Muldoon area when we were incorporated with it. And I just wouldn't like to see it myself. I would like to have our own separate area here and our own governing body.
Jane Angbich.
You mean a special legislative district in relation to,
I beg your pardon?
when you say a special district, I'm not sure that I know what you mean. Does that mean a special district for voting in relation to representation in the legislative body?
Yes, ma'am.
Or is that, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mary Proney.
I talked to Joel DeBoer, who did the drawing up the lines for the last proposed divisions. And from what he told me today, to have 11 single-man districts, he wasn't sure that there was enough population yet in Chugach, Eagle River, along with the population in Fort Rich, not to have some Muldoon in. It sort of sounded like if they were single-man districts, that it would probably take about 13, because you have to go to even numbers, to make it individual districts that would only be Eagle River, Chugach, and Fort Ridge. It just might take that to get one district in this area without having some of Muldoon in it.
I think if this comes about, you probably have quite a problem on your hands out here, because we won't like it a bit.
You mean you do or don't want a district that would just be Fort Ridge, Chugach, and Eagle River?
That's what we do want.
That's what you do
That's
want.
what
In
I
other
want
words,
personally. I don't speak for everybody.
in other words, you're recommending, even if it takes going to 13 members, so that you have an individual member, that's what you folks would like to see, you think?
That's what I would like to see myself.
All right. Thank you. That's what I was trying to find out.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Are there others here who would like to be heard this time?
Mr. Chairman, one thing we haven't heard any comment on, and I would be personally very interested in, we all are well aware of the legal problems, and so we realize it's perhaps difficult for some of you to give testimony, but on the form of government, that is the manner of executive, the commission has tentatively, and this is just for the first draft, adopted the strong mayor with the separate legislative body as the type of executive. There is also the city council or city assembly type, where the council hires a manager. I would be interested to possibly hear some comment as to how perhaps some of you feel on the form of executive.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Fisher?
Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to give a recommendation on that. Speaking of different counties or boroughs and so forth, I myself would like to see the individuals from a different borough, say Matt Sue run the Anchorage borough, the Anchorage borough run that, and you haven't got all this personal stuff come in, I want this done, I want that done, and who I know, see? So I think we just change different governments, let them run ours for a while, they run theirs, you probably have some pretty good
It'd be an interesting concept.
That's different.
It's different, certainly. Mr. Fisher?
I'd like to kind of get this in focus, something in focus for myself here, and I apologize for being a little late. Perhaps Mr. Jordan had already talked before I got here, but I'm curious how the petition process is going, what timing is expected to be in the petition to the Local Boundary Commission, because that has a bearing on our effect on the Eagle River and Chugach area, because it seems to me offhand you may be voting on unification anyway, if the petition process takes as long as I think it does. But I'd sure like to get some comment. If you would, please.
Mr. Chairman, I think I had asked to make a statement just prior to the close of the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the answer to her question.
She adopted mine, she thought that was great.
Did she adopt it? I wasn't listening. If she did, I'll defer. But I'd like to hear comment on her request.
Mr. Briggs had his hand up a moment ago.
I think I've proposed this a time or two, and I haven't gotten very far. I recall that the city of Anchorage went into a higher manager, where they had an assessed valuation of about $100 million. As a city, it has functioned very well and developed in a very fine city under a city manager ever since that day. It has been my strong feeling for 2 or 3 years that the business of the Greater Anchorage Borough is a huge business, and that it seems to me that certainly we could get the most efficient operation of our borough through an elected, through a professional manager. So we had to go out and spend $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 for a manager to get the best you can. I've had a strong feeling that manager can make his salary up several times in a year as a professional manager. Now, I was going to ask this question. I noticed that the vote, this first vote, was fairly close. I would be interested in the main arguments on both sides, pro elected manager as against the professional manager.
Mr. Chairman.
Mrs. Bronny?
In Arliss's description of the two powers, she failed to mention that the strong administrator hires a professional manager in the proposal that we have. He answers to the mayor and has to be ratified by the legislative body. He is only fireable by the mayor. He's hired and fired by the mayor, but he does have to be ratified by the legislative body in the strong executive that we approved of. Yes, I think all of us agreed that there must be a hired professional manager to assist in this new government.
Ms. Brooks?
This is not a personal opinion, but last fall, when we were preparing for elections, I ran 4 candidates meetings in 1 month for all the borough assembly and mayor and school board candidates. And this question was asked for almost everyone. And I didn't keep a head count, but my recollection is that it was pretty well divided on this point. Some people felt very strongly that the manager wanted, some people felt very strongly that the mayor wanted. I don't know. I can't say it's 50-50, but my impression was that was the balance. A lot of you were, practically everybody here who said those meetings, you think that was inaccurate.
Hello?
Mr. Reed, on this, for manager, professional manager, or mayor, is there anything in statute 29 say for 6 months you have to be by the mayor, or then after you could go manager federal government?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you mean as far as if you wrote that in the charter in the transition section, or if one didn't work, anytime you have a charter, of course, it obviously can be amended and you could change it. You know, there have been attempts to...
Is it 6 months in between?
To my knowledge, that doesn't ring a bell. Maybe Mr. Garnett.
Not that I know of,
Speak,
Mr. Chairman. I can't say for certain, but I'm not aware of any 6 months requirement of that sort.
But I mean, like here, when the people voted for the borough, the mayor, government was in for 6 months, and the people had a chance to change the city one.
I'm not aware of any limitation.
Is there someone else here who would like to be heard? Wallace?
I'm Joe Wallace, and I'd just like to back Kemper Johnson saying that we should have our own local representative if we do have to be unified. We always have our own little community Mr. Lowell pointed out, it may act as if we're always fighting together, but when we deal with Anchorage, we're pretty well unified. And to have us be with Muldoon doesn't mean that we dislike Muldoon. As I look at it, it's like having a sitting representative for England and Germany during World War II. And I don't mean that we're enemies of Muldoon. We are. I'm not an enemy of Anchorage. I never have been. And I know Mr. Reed's been out here for 100 and some years. And he had faith in us fingers. I'm glad to see it. And I thought that was Adolf Hitler. But I have been chased by Adolf Hitler for about a year now. And really, he happens to be in this room. I've gone through a real conspiracy. And I'll just give you a copy of this. And this is why, and Mrs. Froney, I see she's laughing, but what she said tonight was ludicrous in my eyes. And I mean that sincerely. She said that we are on the fringes, I guess at the edge of here, so that because we're on the edge, or whatever, maybe we won't be, we'll have a little more freedom. I am on the edge of the edge, and I have no freedom. I have just learned yesterday that the borough is sucking me under again. I've lost a year and a half and $40 million that was put into it in good faith. And the borough's turning to whatever. It's just sickening because of what you call a council meeting run by this Hitler that has claimed to represent the majority, to represent the minority, that he is killing the very pioneers that founded this country. I've been out here 21 years, my brother's been out here 22. Our family's been out here probably 100 years together altogether. Not that longevity gives me any extra rights, but it ought to give me equal rights. Tonight is a copy of me. The attorney, wife, is representing this township organization, is sitting on a table. She looks like a fine lady. I'm sure she is. Her husband's fine. But it's been a very sad situation. I'm not speaking for Swiss Health. The editor won't even accept any more letters on it. And I've never written it. I got to pay, but I'm so broke I can't. They got me so broke, I got a sick daughter and I can't even buy medicine. But that's beside that. But the point I'm trying to make is I am for local government so that we can control our own destiny. Mary Froney has said at those borough meetings, I'm sure she means well. She's trying to save the world by stopping Swiss Health or whatever. I don't tell them what to do on Hillside Drive. I think they got the brains over there to do what they want. I don't have to tell you what to do in Anchorage. I love Anchorage. I'm glad I said it. If it wasn't, I couldn't be in the business I'm in out here. But we just want to control our own destiny, so we want, if we do have to be governed by a unified monster, give us our own representative that is entirely our own, not split with Germany or Poland or Russia. Not that we're against them, no, we aren't. Our former enemies are all against them. But let us have our own representative. If it has to. And I'm sorry for being interrupted.
Fine, Louis. Thank you very much.
That's unification.
General name. Ma'am?
I'm Jane Oakley, and I'd like to say that I agree with things that have been said most recently. I need to repeat, but I think each time it's said again, you'll know that we feel strongly. If anything has come about in the last 6 months, I think, besides all the other upheavals, it's been a feeling that, first of all, we have a little bit more self-confidence than we've ever had before. We know now that we have some expertise to offer in this community, and we, once again, would not like to have to share with Muldoon, for example, this feeling that we have as a community. In terms of campaigning, I know in the past when people from this area have had to campaign in the Muldoon area, they felt very defeated because they're not known in that area. And it seems that they've had to waste a great deal of time going to this area to get themselves known. And I'm sure it's for Muldoon having to run for an election.
having to come out here and didn't know. And now, in the last 6 months, we do know each other much better. And I think that no matter how many districts it takes, I think we would be happier by ourselves. Also, in terms of the fact that we know now that we have some expertise within our community, we would definitely favor council's advisory committees, hoping that they would have, I know they would have powers really, but that they would be listened to. Because I suspect that as busy as the unified government will be, providing it comes about, the areas out here, you're not going to have as much time spent in every single area. And the people here would like to do the planning and the suggestion of how they want their community to progress.
Thank you very much. Ma'am?
Yes, I'm Fred Atwater, and it has been said that we are not unique. And this ought to give you some idea as our feelings, as to the way we feel about uniqueness in this area. We are unique. I do it in my own little business. As small as it might be, I feel it because I am a dog groomer myself, and I can't take people's appointments for tomorrow. Those people have to come to me and leave their dog for me in the morning. And I keep the dog all day for those people until they return home from work in the evening. And that is uniqueness. And we do want our own government. We don't speak the same language that the other people do. We have our own lingo in this area. And we would like to have our own.
Thank you, Mrs. Atwater. I see general approval of that statement. Seems to be. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Yeah, my name is Leonard Nugent. I live out here in Burton. And it's hard for me to talk to this charter commission. I realize and appreciate all of you coming out. But I also feel that it's not any use for me to talk. I didn't vote for any of you. I didn't have a chance to charter any kind of a campaign against unification, which I've always been against, still am. And I don't feel like that in my vote tonight, or any other night, that I could put away anything constructive here, because unification to me does not solve all problems. It creates a lot of problems. So, it's just that I cannot feel like that I can have any input that means anything here tonight, because I haven't a right to vote on this thing has been tucked away. A lot of people had a right to campaign for it. I didn't have one. I did not have a right to campaign against it because I wasn't included in it. So I find myself left down in the open tonight. And still, to me, they're shoving this down my throat without a vote. It's taxation without representation. And you bet us, you detest a little hostility in my voice is there, but not directly at you. I want you to know that. But we are got to do something different than what we're doing. I don't think that you are legally a charter commission. I really don't. And I do not accept you as such. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nugent. We recognize your position and we understand it. We also, of course, I think you recognize our position. We have a problem too, so.
Just so you say we're nice guys, even if you or whatever.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Troney.
According to what Borough Attorney told us, the actions that were taken by the Assembly were legal while you folks were out. And that they were, and the Charter Commission was formed during the time that you folks were out, and it's just one of those actions that according to law were legal while you folks were out. I think you'll find that this coming Monday night, I thought we were going to have it last Monday night, but I've seen it now, and it's due to be on the agenda this Monday night. We're declaring ourselves malapportioned. We're recognizing the fact that you do not have a vote, and as I understand it, within the 6 months, we have to, by law, reapportion to give you a vote for a representative on the local legislative body, whether it is a one new government that this charter is trying to work toward, or whether it ends up being the old assembly. So, as far as I understand, you're not having voted on that, but you do have a vote when the charter comes up.
Yeah, but that still doesn't satisfy me that I didn't have a right to vote with what we got here tonight. My rights were denied me. I'm having something shoved onto me that I do not want. And legally, my rights have been violated. They have been tucked away from me. So this would not satisfy me, and I don't care if the legal attorney that you had said that it was legal. I'll get one that will tell me that it's not legal. Right. So it still boils right down to the same thing.
I came in a little late. What Mrs. Pony said, I gather that we are bound by the bond, that there's some other things too. Is that not correct?
You're bound by what?
During the last election in 93, that we were not at the table to vote on. They voted on unification of the Charter Commission and also on bonds. We are bound by those too.
That of course is the borough stand, I imagine. But the bond attorney, the bond houses that buy those bonds will probably have the final say as to whether you're bound by them, because they're not going to buy unless they think you are.
Sure.
They just won't buy them, you know.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I might be able to help out a bit there. My understanding is that the borough is going to court to find the answer to that question concerning the bonds. And so I don't think there is an answer to it right now. They feel they are. Pardon?
I don't get very much confidence in them going to court, but I remember what happened at the Supreme Court, so
well,
it doesn't
make whatever it is the law of the land. So.
Is there someone else here who would like to be heard?
Gentleman back here.
First of all, I'd like to state definitely that I am the local government.
Could you give us your name, please?
Roberts.
Ms. Roberts?
Let's see. And, the Anchorage borough is better than going back under the state. And the eliminating the state, going back to the federal, is not my desire, of course, either. But anyway, this thing of the bonds and the Charter Commission without representation, as the man said, these things become a menagerie. And for the most part, it's difficult to even be heard about it. In the general meetings there, it's almost impossible for a normal citizen to be heard. To say the least, he's got to be patient. And in turn, I believe that if we're going for the bigger form of government, the whole Anchorage borough, that a manager is almost absolute. In other words, the mayor is going to have so much to do that he won't have time to take care of the managerial things.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Brooks?
But this time, I would like to thank the members of the Charter Commission for coming out here. You didn't have to come. I'm sure you knew you were stepping into a hornet's nest if you came. And I personally appreciate the fact that you cared enough to come and listen to us, no matter what we have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
This charter commission here now, if the regular charter people vote on it, if this is my own personal viewpoint, I like to see it in there 1 year. If it don't work, we back up to the borough, and then we get back up to the state and back to territory. I disagree with that. I'd rather be back in the territory days, much better than what we got now of nothing but bureaucracy. You don't know what way you're coming or going. So I'd much rather have the territory myself. Not just because I want cheap license plates and all that, but I mean, I thought there was a lot of freedom that we lost when we didn't come in the state into the borough. That's my own personal view.
Gentlemen.
I'm Les Petro. And I have publicly stated that I didn't think that this group was legally constituted, and I still do not believe that the group is legally constituted. But again, I hope none of you take this as a personal thing. I think that the group is not legally constituted, not some individuals, please. I have also stated the fact that I do not think that our civil rights have been recognized in this area during the time that we were disenfranchised. And I would be one of those who insist that this area have representation on any legislative body that is organized.
Thank you, Mr. Fithill. Lowe?
I'd just like to come back one more time, and you'll notice that the main theme this evening seems to be representation. I believe either lack of it or proper and adequate. Mrs. Froney has kind of hit me twice now, both once as a charter member, which made a remark, and the second time as an assembly member. So I'd like to come back and again touch on something that she referred to. In your earlier remarks, you mentioned that Joel DeVore had given you some indication that there could be a lack of sufficient population out here to justify having a district here. Is that correct?
To have one district that just encompassed Eagle River, Chugach, and Fort Ridge.
Correct. Okay.
You see, there's no possibility without having a huge number on the local legislative body to count out Fort Ridge. But if you had Fort Ridge and Chugach and Eagle River as a group, from what he told me today, he's pretty sure it would force 13 on the legislative body. Because I was asking him about this, knowing that you folks are quite interested in having one representative that represented you folks alone. Now, I haven't succeeded with my one of 4 votes for single-man districts. And I guess it's going to take a few more groups over the borough saying as loud as you folks that you want single-man districts to win out on that one. I've not given up yet. But the 7 out of this group did vote for the multiple-man districts, which I think is less representative, and obviously you folks happen to think that way too.
Okay, now let me go back to your position or remarks you made as an assemblywoman, assembly person.
Call me Mary, I answer better.
Well, I use you that way, Mary. You indicated that you had voted yourself or about to vote yourself as being malapportioned.
The assembly is, we understood it. I don't know how it's happened, but we haven't stated it.
Based on this comment, I would like to ask you, what will be used as the basis for the new apportionment? What figures, what verified figures will be used as the basis for the new apportionment when and if you get around to do this, and at such time, I'm assuming that you will once more attempt to include this area as a part of the total district. What figures are to be used at this time to develop this new apportionment?
In the discussion today, it looked like they would start off with where they were with the apportioning in 73 73 and try to feed into each precinct and each census district the information in relation to new housing that represents new people, and try to come up with a nearer figure as to where the population is now. You see, each of the housing starts is supposedly on record from 73 until now that would allow this as a basis. That's the basis on which both the city and the outside borough came up with their population figures the latest. So it's a matter of making sure that they're down to precincts, not just to census districts.
I don't know how valid that particular method will be, but my own suggestion, I would like to make this as a suggestion to the Charter Commission to be recommended to the borough assemblies, that prior to making any kind of apportionments, or prior to making any more firm draft of how many I should apportion the assembly, I would like to call for a current census of the entire borough, Greater Anchorage Area Borough, because I do believe that there will be some surprising figures arise out of your census of particularly of the Chugiak Eagle River Borough area. I do not know, and I cannot speak for the rest of it, but I can speak quite definitely that there are many families and many residents that have crawled into the woodwork here that will have to be sought out by a census method rather than by any projection that you'll get from a property start. Thank you.
Mr. Parker?
Yes. No, let somebody with more authority than me to ask that question. Mayor Jordan?
4,130.
Registered voters?
10,500. I can contemplate it.
Is there someone else here who would like to be heard? Chairman, Mr. Capello?
Will it be later on that the Charter Commission will tell us or give us suggestions why we should unify, the advantages? I've been hearing like if we do unify, we will absorb some of the cost of the city of Anchorage and be divided equally among everybody, or will that be later on?
Joe, I can't give you an answer to that. I think that probably our job is not to argue the matter. Our job is to present you with a charter, everybody with a charter, and then review it once again in the light of what you and others have said and what we believe to be the majority and what we in ourselves feel is what we were asked to do. When we present that finally, providing the vote takes place on August 11th when we hope to be ready for it, you will have had all the input that is available except that final deal, and that final deal being voting on it. And what I don't think that we are going to argue the matter of unification. We will probably come out with each one of us with statements about what we believe in the charter and the Charter Commission as a whole, what we believe about the charter, what we've tried to do with it, and explain perhaps the positions we've taken. But the matter of unification, I don't think that we would really enter into.
In other words, it's almost like this borough that was formed out here. We were legal, but we didn't have the dollars and cents and it scared people. Now they're going to form a charter with a charter commission. And then when the people vote on unification either way, we won't have no figures of what savings should be, like you tell us, or vice versa.
Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, we are investigating that. We'll have some figures, facts and figures available.
Won't happen yet.
We don't have them yet, but we're hoping to get that job done. We've got some proposals on that.
Joe, we certainly will give you every bit of information that we can for you to make a reasonable judgment. But I don't think the commission as such is going to write it one way or another. We'll say, here are the facts, as best we can deliver them to you.
Mr. President,
Yes,
we're
the gentleman up
most
there.
of the people out here, like myself, don't really get the input of what are the advantages of unification. We heard that it's simplifying the government, that will stop duplication. But these people out here like Diane, the only thing they understand is dollars and cents. Now, will it save us money, unification of a single government?
Mr. Chairman, you know, right now, we'll hope to get more information, but just in one reason that remember, starting back in the city and then on to the borough, there's so much that we lose through lack of communication, through duplication. I don't think that we'll see the cost of government ever perhaps go down, simply because you and I continue to ask more of our government. In some of the areas that we've talked and individually looked into, find, particularly say Juneau, for instance, that they did not increase as rapidly as they would have had they maintained the two governments. In a sense of fairness, you're going to have to take in those people that are employed in local governments. You can't, through the charter, just, you're out of a job. But through attrition, through bringing together the departments, you certainly are going to should get a more efficient operation of the government. You shouldn't have these stalemates, the inability really to get down and solve the community problems. And one of the sad things that's happening right now, and you know, there's a real problem here. We know there was an expedited request for the court to rule. They didn't. We all ran in good faith, and you have your problems, and we have ours. But what's happening now, since the matter of unification has come up, that there are many things that are waiting in the borough, waiting in the city for that vote. And we're causing a real problem for, say, the two local governments. They're holding off on making decisions until this issue is solved. And so there's a real pressure to move ahead. But to answer your question, I think there'll be a lot of savings, better utilization of manpower and people.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
But the people out here, I know how they feel. They know that the city of Anchorage had Mountain View for a good many years, taxed them. I think the city of Anchorage has a funny little rate, right?
Somewhere in there.
All right, 22. All right. And the people in Mountain View got nothing until last year. That's when they started fixing some roads. They've been in the city of Anchorage. Now, we had Dr. Schaff from the Greater Anchorage area borough out here. Now, when the two of them get together, and, oh man, it's going to be all.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This gentleman over here would like to be heard.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Ernie Brannon, and I think generally speaking, the larger the government becomes, the more difficult it is to deal with. What I'm wondering is there provision in the charter, or will there be a provision in the charter for an office of ombudsman?
Yes, last night we passed a section, I don't know. There will be a provision in the charter for an office of ombudsman. Mr. Fisher?
I'd like to respond to the finance question there. I'm with Arliss. I guess this is better.
That's technology, you have to call a little off.
Oh, okay. I believe there'll be some savings, some dollar savings. Whether or not there's some mill levy savings will be entirely up to the Assembly.
That's contradictory, isn't it?
No, not in the least, because there might be some dollar savings in the government they might spend it someplace else.
Oh.
I mean, we don't know about that. But there'll, in my view, definitely be dollar savings. I can answer that question. 4 years ago, there was a pretty substantial dollar savings caused by unification. Now, as I say, we don't have the answer to the question.
Mr. Chairman, Benny Leonard isn't here tonight. He would certainly like to argue that point with you.
I know.
Mr. Wallace?
I'd just like to comment, I think America was founded not for the purpose of saving dollars. I'm more interested in my freedom, my right to control my own destiny. I have a voice and I have dollars. I'm sure that with their own government isn't going to double as was proposed. It might cost a little more, I don't care. I want to get back to what America's all about at the beginning. And that's to be able to have a voice in my own destiny. And with my involvement in this Swiss Alps deal with the Anchorage Borough, in my eyes, the whole thing has been shambles. Just a complete shambles. It's the first time I've ever dealt with government, and I dealt with all levels simultaneously. And to me, it's the biggest mockery of my life, really. It's that sad. It's very sad. And it has destroyed the family, basically. It has over 100 years in this country. Not one person. We homesteaded that land, and I thought homesteading was wrong. And that was nothing compared to subdividing. Nothing. And I haven't even subdivided now, it's all in the question on the farm. This is last night. So, if these people are willing to sacrifice your freedoms, your right to get up and be heard, and you have the same right to get up and be heard as from the Anchorage Borough. And they're decent people. There are several decent people up here. You're not idiots. But if you live in Anchorage, you're one of 100,000. Well, they can't listen to everybody. Or your voice can't count as much. If you lived in New York City, you'd be one of 8 million. That's what's been so beautiful about living out here. We haven't had much progress for electricity or telephone and so forth when we first got here. We didn't write about it. But that's what life is all about, right? I mean, that's what being an American is our freedom. That's what their pilgrims or something came over here for. Not whether it's cheaper than living in England. So if you're willing to sacrifice your freedoms for a mill or a IRA or Indian, if you want that color, then that's sad. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks,
That's why we are a unique community. We really are.
Mrs. Atwood?
That man has been absolutely forbidden to do exactly what those people whose names were on that petition did years ago, just because they were able to do it. Just because this man was not able to do it at that time. Now, he is not, they will not let him do it. And I don't think that is fair in any sense of the word. And I don't think the Greater Anchorage Area Borough did that man right and proper at all. Because they should come out here and they should live for a month. They would understand what we have to go through out here. We have to fight for what we want. If we want it, we've got to fight all the way.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Atwood.
That's right.
Sir. Is there anyone else here?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Jordan was going to give us some input, wasn't he?
He did ask to be heard toward the end.
I think we feel out here the same way that you feel about people working in D.C. and California and Minnesota and Florida telling you how to run the city and the borough in there. And I think we feel the same way out here about people in Anchorage telling us how to run our business.
Mr. Chairman, frankly, I think it would be nice if you made a public announcement that you would take the whole community down to the local pub and it's all you tonight.
Do you own it? Do you own it?
Somebody in Latin or someplace said it's not that I love Rome more, someplace more. It's not that we dislike Anchorage. We all deeply love Anchorage. Everything I earn out here is purchased from Anchorage indirectly. But that isn't to say that we aren't unique. We can get along without Anchorage, but we do love it. I'm dependent on it. You are dependent on us to some extent. But we do love our own area more. And as well as I just said, that we look at, you look at D.C., It isn't that you hate them or dislike them, but you don't want them running your business. We're all Americans, and they got their bag, and you got yours. Keep your own business, not ours, and we'll try to keep ours. But we do all get up and just walk over here.
We got the bill full.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Not, I'll call on Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Charter Commission. I'd like to echo Natalie's comment a little bit earlier. Thank you very much for coming out. And Arliss, yes, we do think you're good guys. There are situations. I'll read this if you don't mind, because it is rather carefully worded. 16 days ago, the Alaska Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional legislation which led to the creation of the Chugach-Eagle River Borough. That borough had been certified as incorporated on September 12, 1974. Subsequent to the incorporation, a number of actions were taken within the Greater Anchorage Area Borough to reform and proceed based on exclusion of the Chugach-Eagle River area. One of those actions was formation of a charter commission to prepare a document under which a unified city and borough of Anchorage would operate. Having not been a part of the Greater Anchorage Area Borough, residents of Chugach-Eagle River did not take part in electing members of the Charter Commission, nor did they have an opportunity to voice an opinion as to whether unification should be pursued at this time. Historically, Chugach-Eagle River has not supported the concept of unification. In 1971, a charter was defeated by more than 3,000 votes outside the city. Almost 2,000 of those votes came from precincts in Chugach-Eagle River. At that time, only 83 voters favored the charter. It is not known whether that ratio is still valid. It could only be determined if voters in Chugach-Eagle River had the opportunity to indicate whether they favored formation of a charter commission. Status of the Chugach-Eagle River area is still uncertain. At this time, residents are circulating petitions asking the local boundary commission to set a new election on that question, or on the question of separation and formation of a separate borough, a procedure which the Supreme Court said should have been followed rather than resort to special legislation. In view of this continued effort to separate from the Greater Anchorage Area Borough, it has not been our desire to interfere with unification efforts underway in the Anchorage area. Because of the uncertainty of Boundary Commission action, however, there remains the possibility that this community might be affected by present charter activities without having had an adequate opportunity to participate in those activities. With my knowledge and concurrence, Senator Ed Willis contacted a member of the Charter Commission to suggest the Commission defer its planned August election pending resolution of the petitions before the Boundary Commission. I repeated this suggestion to Mr. Joe Josephson. Last Wednesday, Mr. Josephson advised me that the Commission had decided to proceed with its plan. This decision was confirmed by Commission Chairman Mr. Reed. In view of this decision by the Commission, residents of Chugach-Eagle River have no choice but to take action to protect their rights. In this regard, I and 15 other residents of Chugach-Eagle River have today filed suit asking that the Commission be prevented from spending additional monies from appropriated tax funds and asking that the Commission be declared unlawfully constituted. At a public meeting last night at which the Chugach-Eagle River Borough Association was formed, residents also determined that they should be represented in an action filed by the state before the Supreme Court concerning legality of bond issues approved on February 11, 1975. These steps are taken with reluctance but are necessary in light of the possible consequences arising from disenfranchisement of the voters of Chugach-Eagle River during the period between September 12, 1974 and April 15, 1975 as a result of the Supreme Court ruling. Being subjected to those consequences would turn disappointment into tragedy.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fisher?
I'd like to thank Mr. Jordan for the people that are with you for taking that action. I personally am very concerned about our status, and I think it ought to be clarified. And again, I think
it's not something I feel good about.
No, none of us do, but we know its job has to be done.
I can certainly sympathize with the commission members like
I understand that we've pretty well covered the field. I hope we haven't left anybody out. If anybody does want to talk, we'd be pleased to hear them. If you have any input, no matter what the results of either the suit or anything else that goes on now, we would appreciate any input that you care to make, just in case there is an election, and just in case you are included. We'd like to have your input to the best of our ability.
I'm afraid to include the Eagle River Chugiak borough into that outfit would be like the slavery days. They had slaves, they needed the slaves, but they couldn't get fire insurance.
And there is one man got fired at his job.
Thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate it very much.
Really, I haven't seen you in a couple of years. I saw Frank. Frank, before you all get out of there, you better come meet you down the local pub. Hey, try the bar. Yes, that's Frank's bar. Where is he? Give it to Frank. Being clear. I wasn't
Thank you.
You know, I was looking at it like John, but it is.
All I want to know, the first thing I want to know is, are you asking?
Suzanne and I worked together, you know, Christian teacher, and I just couldn't believe that that was what.